Welcome to Native Remodels how-to videos. This is part one of an organizational system that we're going to come up with for our new area of workspace that we will be storing all of our tools. So part one today is going to be showing you how to build a workbench in this area. So what we're going to do is about a 3-foot high workbench, 2 feet deep, 8 feet long, with a pegboard backing for access to tools. First off though, I'm going to have to clean my tools here. Alright, now that we got our work area cleaned up, let me show you some of the tools we're going to be using today. I got a 4100 Bosch table saw with a 10-inch blade. Got a 12-inch miter saw. If you don't have either of these to cut your material, what you could do is use a circular saw with a speed square right at the tip of your 2x4 there and run along it to get a nice square cut. Next we have a drill. This bad boy is going to be able to allow us to screw that backing over for the pegboard on so that we can detach that if needed. I have a harness here that attaches all of these fancy little pockets here. Pencil. You're going to want a tape measure, a hammer. Utility knife is always a good tool to have. So over here we got some horses that we can then use for putting any type of material down if we need to put things together. Air compressor with a framing gun to put our framing together for the bench. A blower to blow off the work area as we're working. My trusty vacuum. And also a broom to keep the work area clean. Let's get to work. We went to the store earlier today to get our materials. Here's the footage for that. So we're here at Menards, and today we got a cart that we're going to use that will be able to carry all of our material that we're getting today for our workbench. So right now we have already on the cart the UV finished industrial panel. This guy right here is 4 coats on each side. It allows it to have a nice surface for you to work on. Something smooth, something that's going to hold up to your durability. Next step we're going to want to get is our pegboard. So I'm going to go with 4x4 because we already have a workbench that's going to be about 2.5 to 3 feet tall. So this guy right here is going to serve as our backing in order to be able to put tools on that is easily accessible for what we're going to be building on our workbench. 2x4s. So there's 2 different types of 2x4s that you're going to see at Menards. First is these construction lumbers. No, don't want those. You're going to want these Sierra Select studs. These guys right here are going to be a lot more straight, a lot more sturdy, and these are pressure treated to a better level than your regular construction lumber. So we're going to want about 10 of these. Now that we got all the 2x4s, we're going to want to get some sort of 1x that's going to act as a framing that goes around our pegboard to hold it to the 2x4s. We're going to attach to the back of the bench to have this in the middle for our hanging supplies. So as you're up here getting these pieces of wood that you're going to put as your framework, you got to recognize the different types of wood here. So this is your standard pine. This kind of tends to bend and have a lot of defects on the wood. You don't want to get something like that. What you want to do is get a quality pine or something as even in the select pine. The select pine is your highest quality you're going to get. This has got a little bit of a rough edge, a little rough on the fronts and backs. Your select pine is nice and smooth. No pockets, no ding marks. This is what you want. Forgot to mention, you're going to want some fasteners. So what we're going to do is get some cabinet screws that have flat head on them. Don't need them too long. This is what you're going to use to attach your back piece that's going to be hanging your tools. something a little long because you're going to be going through a 1x and also a 2x4. So I don't want this thing to ever fall apart. So I'm going to use ring shank nails. This is going to really get that nice tight bond between both wood. So I came out here to get us some nice 4x4 posts that we're going to cut right in half and then be able to shorten them up to what we want for our workbench corners. So now that we have all the lumber, off the build. So, when you're cutting wood, there's always a rule of thumb with getting material from any hardware store. These are never ever a flush cut. So you always want to square cut your ends before you make your measurements. So you want to cut these at 35 1/4. Reason being is because we're subtracting 3/4 of an inch off the top of the height for the countertop. You want to do that for all 4 legs so that every single leg is even and the same height. Now that we got our legs cut, you want to cut your lateral bracing, the full length of your bench. Whatever size that is, that's up to you. So you can measure whatever size you want. For us, we're going to do an 8-foot bench. So we have a full 8-foot sheet of plywood. We're able to use a full 2x4. So there's no cuts on our full length lateral bracing. But for the back cuts that are going to go in perpendicular to keep the bench from sagging, those are going to be actual cuts that are going to be a little smaller. One thing I did forget to mention though is that the bottom full length lateral bracings will have to get cut 3 inches shorter because of the outside pieces that will be going on. So once you cut the 3 inches off of your bottom full length lateral bracings, you're going to want to cut 5 14-inch pieces and 9 24-inch pieces out of the 2x4 for your perpendicular bracing, otherwise known as the width of your table. So the next step we're going to do is put the main framework together of your bench. It's easier to do the top first, face down on the ground, because you'll be able to nail everything together a lot quicker to flip it up. So for when you're measuring out the bracing in the middle, you're going to want to start at the end and mark every 2 feet on center, which would be 2 feet, 4 feet, and 6 feet on an 8-foot workbench. Next step is to lay out your corners. What you're going to want to do is put a mark at 1.5 for a 2x4 width, 5 inches for a 3.5 inch leg width, and a 1.5 for another 2x4. Now this is where a speed square is really nice to have. You put these flush, make sure this is flush against that right there, and just follow your marks through. And now you are marking both corners right away on both your large laterals. Now you can make sure that these are going to be studs, and these are your legs. So when you're doing your ends with your legs, you're going to want to put your perpendicular lateral bracing on the outside first. You're going to want to make sure your tops are flush here and the outsides are flush as well. You're going to pin it twice with your nailer. The best way to hold this is making sure that you have both feet on, 1 foot on it, still making it sure it's flush, and holding it and putting all your body weight on there so when you hit it, it's not moving too much. So now when you're attaching the legs, make sure it's right in the corner, and you're going to want to use this bonus tool that I forgot to tell you about, an F-clamp. This guy right here opens up to about 12 inches. So we're going to clamp this right to the side, very lightly, not too tight. We're going to use a framing square to make sure that our leg is at a 90-degree angle and straight. As you can see, we're pretty off there. So we're going to move this a little bit until we're right where we need to. Once we know, we can nail it. We're going to do a pattern on this here, where we're going to put a nail here and flip it on the other side, and I'll show you. So as you can see, we had the pattern going top and bottom corners. We're going to take that pattern and flip it around. So we're going to do the top corner here and the bottom corner there, making sure that we're still squared off here. That's pretty good. want to do the other leg before you put your next piece of perpendicular bracing behind this. Now that you got your legs in, you can put all of your perpendicular bracing in down all of your marks that you made. Now that you got your legs all on, keep it upside down because you're going to want to attach the sides of your lower bench piece. So we're going to mark this down 1.5 inches. And then you can also use the F-clamp that I showed you earlier to hold the one side that you aren't nailing yet. These, you want to make sure that they're flush on the outside of your legs. So when you nail it, make sure you're on the line and you're flush here. So since you have all 4 of these legs in that are the same length, marking down 1.5 inches on both sides of these will ensure that this lateral bracing is in place and level. We're going to do the same thing to the other side with the last 24-inch bracing piece. So now that you got your legs secured with your lateral bracing, we're going to flip this to one side with the legs facing down. We're going to take those longer bracings that we cut down 3 inches. We're just going to place that in line with the 2x4s that we put on the outside of the legs and nail it on both sides. Now that you have your piece laying on this side as well, this is a good time to pound them nails down that don't set so well. So now that you got your piece on the side like this, if you hook the outside lateral bracing, every 16 inches is what you're going to want to mark for those 14-inch lateral bracings that we cut for the bottom section. So you're going to want to flip the piece again to the other side so that you can also mark the other side so your bracing will all be in the right spot. Now we're ready to take our 14-inch bracing and install it right where it needs to go. So now that you got everything nailed together and framed, we can flip it now right side up and go over to the table saw and cut our tops. So the top of our countertop here is going to be 30.5 inches. So measuring up, 30.5 inches is right here. That leaves us with 17.5 inches. The 17.5 inch piece is going to be served as the bottom portion of our bench. What you're going to want to do now is come over to your table saw and mark where you're going to want it. Since this only rips up to 23 or 25 inches, we're going to want to open this fence here to the 17.5 mark so that we're cutting our smaller piece first, leaving that big piece on this side so that we have both pieces cut to the exact measurements we need it to be. So cutting a piece of plywood this large is actually a two-man job. You're going to want some help with this. So I got someone over there that's going to hold the rest of the piece once it follows through, and also to turn my saw on because I can't get to it. So you're going to want to get this down to 17 inches because between our posts there is only 17 inches. So we move the fence in 1/2 inch to take 1/2 inch off of the smaller piece. So now that you got both of your countertop pieces cut, you can now attach it with a good 2.5 inch framing nailer on the top and bottom pieces. Now that this is cut to fit between those legs. I'm going about every 4 to 6 inches for my nails here. So once you've secured the outer edges on the left, right, and back side with nails, you're going to want to measure out and figure out again where you have those bracing. So this one's at 2 feet. So what we can do is just start nailing at 2 feet right away. That way you get a nice secure all the way down this top piece here. So now that you got this top all secured, do the exact same thing to the bottom portion, just remember it's 16 inches on center. So the final step to this whole workbench that I decided to build is your pegboard. Now, we're deciding to put this directly in the center of our bench. You can put it wherever you want. You can get a longer one, you can get a full-size pegboard. We decided to go with the 4x4 so we can center it right in the middle, have access to our electricity so that we can run power cords wherever it is needed. After cutting 2 pieces of 2x4 to 7 feet and 1 to 41 inches, that's the framing for your pegboard. Now you want to cut one of the pieces for the front facing of your pegboard. This piece is that 1x3. you want to cut it to 48 inches. This is what's going to help tie all that together to assemble your pegboard. Now that you got all your pieces cut to assemble your pegboard, you want to kind of clamp it down just in one corner. What we have underneath is the 2x4s that we cut, the 7-foot lengths going perpendicular to the table, and that 41-inch piece that's going to be flush on the back side here, right underneath this pegboard here. That 1x3, right in front, right on top. What you're going to need are the 2.5, or these are the 2-inch cabinet screws. That's what we're going to use to attach the face frame onto the lumber behind here. And then you're also going to have the 2.5-inch cabinet screws. That's what we're going to use to attach the legs of our pegboard to the back side of our bench. So with these screws, what we like to do is put a nice little pattern on the end here. You want to start one here and one lower and in more. So that way, this framing here isn't tweaking so much. So before you move your piece, you're going to want to make sure that you attach the middle section here, because if you don't, that 2x4 lumber that was underneath is going to fall right out, right on your foot. Happened to me. Once you got this all secured on the top, you can then measure your side pieces that you're going to put up. This right here is 45 and a quarter, which should be the same over here, 45 and a quarter. So that we're going to use the same stuff we used on the top piece here, that 1x3. So for the sides, you're going to want to put one screw on top, and then one screw on bottom. Making sure that everything is in line with your pegboard. That way, you can evenly space out 2 more screws in the center. Now that you got all the framing and the face frame of your pegboard situated, you can take it now and place it on the back side of your bench, right where the pegboard sits on the top side of that bench. Now this is where you can play with it a little bit and see exactly where you're going to want this. Like I said before, we want it centered. So I'm going to come off the side here and make sure that I'm on center. We're right on center. I also cut one more piece at 41 inches, because if you notice, your pegboard's a little wobbly here. So if you just take this one piece and use some of those 2-inch cabinet screws and attach this to the framing, that'll stop the wobble from the other side. Now what we're going to use are those 2.5 cabinet screws with the T15 bit to attach these legs of our pegboard to the framework. You're going to want to do that staggered pattern again, an inch in from all sides, so you're not splitting any of the wood. Now let's grab some of those 2-inch screws. Don't need many, 3 to 4. Just to take that 41-inch piece and stick it on the back side as a backing for your pegboard. Doesn't have to be fancy, it's just a backing so that nothing wobbles around anymore. So now that we have this all assembled, we got a little bit of a wobble on this. You want to make sure that stays nice and tight because we're going to be putting some heavy tools on there. So I found some random 3-inch drywall screws. You can use pretty much anything, 3 inches or longer. What we're going to do is place each corner right inside of the pegboard here, because the 2x4 is wider than this 1x3 and it's not as much meat that you're going through. So by using this 3-inch screw, trying to get to this particle board back here, we'll be able to get there better by going just on the pegboard. So now I got 2 more to attach those legs that we have to the bottom. So this concludes our workbench. We now have a very sturdy, durable workbench where we have enough storage to put whatever we need underneath. Nice wide and long workbench with the pegboard for any type of tools we're going to be needing to do anything on here. We also kept this 3.5-inch overhang for this exact purpose. It's that simple. Clamp it on, tighten it up, do the work needed. I hope you like this video. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell for any upcoming videos that we may be doing. Our next one in line is a loft area for overhead storage. But to show you how durable this guy right here that we just built is, there you go. Go use yours.